welcome everyone back to the Indigenous Projects and Events speaker series. For those just joining us, my name is Natasha Delany, and I'm the founder and Executive Director of Indigenous Projects and Events, which is a fully Indigenous-owned company based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Our mission is to create spaces where Indigenous knowledge, leadership, and voices are amplified. Through our corporate event planning, our Indigirize Life Skills program, and our Speakers and Facilitators Bureau, we connect incredible Indigenous facilitators, speakers, and change makers with audiences who are ready to listen and take action. So the IPE Speaker Series is one of the ways that we showcase our leaders across Turtle Island who are making meaningful impact in their communities, in their industries, and beyond. It's an opportunity to learn from their journeys, from their life experiences, and their expertise. Our next guest is a powerful blend of healthcare leadership, academic expertise, and community commitment. Casey Hewes is Cree and mixed European from Treaty 6 territory. He is a proud member of the Métis Nation in British Columbia, and he is a registered nurse with an MBA and over 20 years of experience in healthcare, from primary care to acute care, including managing operations for 300 clinicians and with an $80 million budget. His career has taken him across Canada and into the United States, always with a focus on improving healthcare systems and outcomes for Indigenous communities. Currently, he is pursuing his PhD in cardiac wellness in Indigenous guided primary care at the University of British Columbia. And Casey is deeply passionate about building bridges between healthcare organizations and Indigenous communities. He also deeply cares about empowering Indigenous communities to design and lead their own healthcare systems. As a father of 2 young children, Casey's work is also rooted in creating a healthier, more equitable future for the next generations. His presentations are both deeply knowledgeable and action-oriented, challenging us to think about what true partnership and self-determination in healthcare really mean. So please join me in welcoming Casey Hewes. Thank you
Ah,
so much for joining me.
Thanks, Natasha. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, so right before we hit record, you had mentioned that you grew up or you were born here in Edmonton.
Yeah. I should probably start off with I'm lucky enough and extremely grateful to be calling from the traditional unceded territory of the Silks here in Vernon, where I've been lucky enough to live for about the past 5 years. So, yes, from the very beginning, I was born in Treaty 6 territory, Edmonton, uh, but was moved at the age of 3 and was raised in Hawaii till adulthood. So bachelor's, master's, education, a little bit of professional career, got married, all in Hawaii, and we were fortunate enough to be able to move back to Canada. So
That is
it's a very
amazing.
exciting journey thus far.
Yeah, I was wondering, and I was going to ask you, where did you get your MBA? So you got
Mhm.
it in Hawaii. You met your wife in Hawaii. I think you said about 15 years ago. You've been married for 15 years.
Yep, all in
Is
Hawaii.
she Hawaiian?
No, her background is Filipino.
Okay.
She's but she's from Southern California.
Yeah. Oh,
So
okay. Yeah. So how was that experience? What made you, why did your parents move to Hawaii?
yeah, these stories are always so much fun. So my mom was from Hawaii. I should say she was a dual. So she was born in Canada, and her father, uh, who was also originally from Edmonton, uh, her and her him and his brothers started a business drilling for water. So in about like the 50s or 60s, when Hawaii was expanding and growing, they moved to Hawaii.
Okay.
So for my mom, half of her siblings were born in Edmonton, and then the other half were born in Hawaii. And
Mm,
she started this trend of spending substantial time in Canada and Edmonton, but also Hawaii as well. So yeah, I was. She got married, had my sister and myself, and then the way she puts it is, it was too cold for her after so many years, and then she went to Hawaii.
so in terms of the Cree, is it your father then
It
that
is.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's my father who's Cree. He was adopted, so
Mm,
we weren't lucky enough to be able to grow up with our culture. Uh, but yeah, so he was Cree, and he was going to stay in Canada and in Edmonton. But right, your wife and your family moves. So he also moved to Hawaii, and he's since passed for about 20 years or so. So
mhm.
I like to think he'd be back here with us if he had the chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. So do you, in terms of like ceremony and the belief systems, um, we had a client and it was actually the University of Calgary, and we were planning the Global Indigenous Social Work Conference. And so we had people in the committee, like a lot of doctorates within the social work community from all across the globe. And some of them, or one of them, was from Hawaii. And his perspectives and like what he brought to the table, there was like there it was different from like
Mm.
here, like the Crees and whatever, but at the same time it seemed like just super similar. So does any of that kind of resonate with you?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think there's quite a bit of similarities and some very important differences between kind of the native Hawaiian experience and journey and First Nations here in Indigenous here in Canada, right? They've both been colonized. There's they both have been overthrown. There's some really important differences. There's no reserve in Hawaii.
Mm,
Uh, there was no treaties in Hawaii either. So there's some, and the other probably really significant difference is that typically Native Hawaiians are seen as one group, as opposed to here in Canada we have many nations. So there are some significant differences, but Natasha, I what I lean on quite a bit with my time in Hawaii is the two cultures were really infused from a very early age. Like it was mandatory in schools to learn Native Hawaiian. It was mandatory to learn ceremonies in Hawaii. Street names are Native Hawaiian, and right, the list just kind of goes on and on. There's a very unique Hawaii culture, Hawaiian music, right, that has elements of Western instruments, but with a really heavy emphasis on Hawaiian culture. There's
mm,
the aloha shirt. There's quite a bit of representation or kind of integration that's happened in Hawaii that I do learn try to integrate as best I can and where I can as well, where it's appropriate here in
in your
Canada.
work, in your work.
Yeah, precisely. Yes, in my work, exactly.
Can you share a bit about your background and what inspired you to enter the field of healthcare?
Yeah, thank you, Natasha. So my we grew up on a very small island in Hawaii. It's called Lanai, about 2,000 people, 2,500 people, and my mom was a teacher. So, education was always a really big part of our lives. We went from a very, what kind of words can I use here? A very humble family with very extremely limited resources. And I got the chance to see my mom work through college and become a teacher and really start to shift things in our lives and her career opportunities. So that was really important to get a front row seat to. And I knew for myself, I was probably going to be looking for something similar. I really like again, the integration of the sciences with the social sciences, if you will, or using sciences to help people directly was always something that I was really looking for. And yeah, nursing's been a great place for it. And I feel I haven't gotten too far away from that essence of nursing and helping people. It's just for me, the journey's just kind of always been continuing to the next phase.
Yeah. So, how did your upbringing in Treaty 6 and your mixed Cree and European heritage influence the way that you approach healthcare leadership?
Yeah, thanks. What a great question. So, as I mentioned, I wasn't lucky enough to grow up with my culture. So I've really been on a journey and continue to be on a journey, right, of learning ceremony, traditional language, worldviews, philosophies, as much as I possibly can. I've been lucky enough to have elders and knowledge keepers and just so many people embrace me. So much of our story is similar to mine, Natasha, where we didn't grow up with our culture and we didn't grow up in our community, but I have been it's been very humbling and encouraging how elders and traditional knowledge keepers, how generous they've been with me to teach me our culture. So what that's really done for me in terms of healthcare leadership is I feel I have a lot more range that I could start to lean in on when I need to. Healthcare can be a very dynamic environment, right? You're making these decisions that cost a lot of resources and have serious implications. So there was a time in my life where I really, really pulled on Western worldviews and Western valued systems to make those decisions, and it worked out well, and that was uh, was the best I could do at the time. But now I have
More
another
awareness.
worldview, yeah, and I understand, right, and I'm understanding the culture better, and this happens through all facets of my life too, Natasha, not just for healthcare leadership. But now I have another another value system that
Hmm.
I could lean on. That's I would argue has actually served me even better to make some of these decisions.
It's like like when you start to learn ceremony, and I don't because you're in Vernon, and sorry, how long you've been there for the past 5 years? You said.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I'm not sure what tribe is out there, what the elder what they teach, right? Because there's Cree, there's like I'm not sure what it is out there, and there's very different, very small, but very these small differences make the biggest difference in terms of like each culture and each way of doing things and practice. But when I started learning, it was such a universal thought. It was more about expansion, right? It wasn't so limited like colonial ways have taught us, right? It was just so unexplainable. It's like the only word that I can think of it is like infinite or like expansion or like universal.
Yeah. You're so right, Natasha. I'll tell you a story that really helped solidify this for me. So I'm learning my traditional language, Cree language, and we were in class, and we were asking the instructor, how do you say I have children, right? And the instructor sat back and thought about it for a bit longer than I would have thought, and the instructor said, well, the closest you're going to be able to get to it is I care for a 9 and 6 year old. We're like, why do you say it like that? Well, in Cree language, therefore in Cree philosophy, there is no ownership. There's a matter of fact no words for ownership, and that was profound for me to spend a significant amount of time in a culture that highly values ownership, or that's very, very has a lot of different words to describe ownership, to emphasizes ownership, to a culture that doesn't even have words to describe ownership. So initially, it's a bit confusing, right? And initially, it's a bit, you have to think through that. But once you spend the time that you need to on something that significant, you can now just now you have unlimited options for what's healthy ownership for Casey in this moment in time. What's healthy ownership for my family? What's good and bad about ownership, right? And now like you said, you have these infinite amount of possibilities that you can now lean on and learn from, which it's been extremely eye-opening.
Super powerful. Super powerful. So you've worked across Canada and in the US. What have been some of the biggest differences in healthcare systems that you've experienced?
Yeah, they're pretty significant differences. And the question that I always get, the fun question is, well, what system's better?
Mm,
Canadian, Canada, or the U.S.? And my answer now, having like personally lived in the different systems and worked, and not just intellectually have read about them, is it depends if you're American and you have American value systems, or if you're Canadian and you have Canadian value systems. Both are extensions of I would say our value systems, not too dissimilar to what we were talking about too, with having two cultures that we can learn from. The my one fear, Natasha, is that we can sometimes get in a situation where uh, we're Canada. We feel strongly about our healthcare and the approach to our healthcare. Whenever we hear anything American, we like quick. It's not for us. We don't. There's nothing there for us to learn, or it's a slippery slope. If we take a look at their electronic health systems, before you know it, we're going to be selling healthcare shares, or right, we're going to be doing something very, very American. And my message, and this also happens with when I do Western and Indigenous work as well. My message is there's actually some really good things happening that will help you with your goals. We just have to be a little bit more open minded, because
mhm.
they've spent a lot of time developing what they've been working on. So
Yeah.
you're right. Let's not take the whole package might not be appropriate, but there might be elements if we just are a bit more open-minded about it.
If we could apply that to every single area of our life, like imagine the world we would live in, you know?
It's a good lesson, isn't it? Yeah, it's a very good lesson.
So you've managed operations for 300 clinicians and an $80 million budget. What did that role teach you about leadership in healthcare?
Yeah, though these tend to be pretty big scales, right? The pretty large initiatives. So
Actually, I have to add to that. So I would love to hear the answer for that. But then, did you identify as an Indigenous person, and were you vocal about that during this role? And did you struggle with like identity or anything within? Because that is a huge. That's huge.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So if to answer your first part, like how do you go about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being responsible for hundreds of clinicians and tens of millions of dollars, or having a role in the responsibility of that, is a lot of trust and a lot of communication. So you'll have a team around you, 6, 8 managers or so, quite a bit of managers, project managers, and so forth. So you have to have quite a bit of trust, a lot of trust, and a lot of good
The
communication.
biggest struggle is the trust.
It's tough, right? And there's ways to go about it. And I think that's where my indigenous work, if we can call it that,
Mhm.
really helped with that. So initially, I would probably say trust is earned, right? We gotta build trust. And once I understood more culturally, I think I was more open with let's start off with trust and see what happens.
Mm.
You're right. These are big scale things and big decisions. So I was uncomfortable, but I have to say, I was really taken aback to how much, how many people responded to that positively, and even took a bolder step forward than they would have if I did it in the other way that I did.
Yeah.
So identity wise, you're right. Identity wise, it was maybe a challenge in that environment, but I could always celebrate the culture in the
Yeah.
way that I worked. I didn't always have to say, well, in Indigenous culture, we do it like this, right? You can just do it
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and see how people respond. And again, to our comment earlier about having a infinite amount of possibilities that you can pull on to, accomplish the goals that you're trying to accomplish, leaning on those cultural insights was invaluable. I made incredible difference.
Amazing. Um, so, how can healthcare organizations become better partners to Indigenous communities?
Mm. So I do some work, some consulting work in this area, and my advice, I'm still refining it, Natasha. Right, we still have a lot of healthcare problems out there, so I still have a lot of work ahead of me. It's to be more proactive than reactive. Is my first kind of message, and then my second message is we really need to move beyond, the way the building looks, the presentation of the building. It does help make a place more inviting. It does help, but we got to start to move until we see it in our policies and procedures. That open-mindedness, that proactivity, then we're not quite there yet.
So, are you talking more on the part of like the actual healthcare provider versus, yeah, and then going into community?
Sorry, I'm talking for like regional health authorities.
Okay.
That's usually my
Okay.
advice.
And so when you're talking about like the building, what you're talking about is like maybe the indigenous aspects, the cultural aspects, maybe they have a teepee in their front mural kind of thing.
There's those very symbolic representations, but I'll even say something as simple as paint the building.
Mm.
It's all white through and through.
Oh, got
Paint
it.
it right, like
Yeah.
paint it a warm pastel
Hmm.
to just make it friendly to everybody.
Yeah. You know,
So
one of the one things that I really like, it really hit me, and even the work that I do is like some of my ceremonial relations, like they work at so we have the distillery, we have the U of A here in Edmonton, and they have, indigenous, I can't remember what you call them, but there's the ceremonial people that the indigenous uh, patients can go to, right,
mm,
when they're struggling. And so um, one of my ceremony sisters, that's her role, and she said a lot of First Nations that come from like the northern communities, like it is so difficult for them to be in that hospital. It is so triggering, and it's hard for a lot of doctors to get the right communication across to figure out what the diagnosis is, because these people are so shut off. And in some cases, there's language barriers as well, right? And so, in one example, she said that this one lady, she was just so traumatized, not just from the physical trauma that she just had, but just, it was emotional and psychological, which is so common in our people. And and that the nurse and the doctors could not get a word from her. But
mm,
then, as soon as she came in and she said a prayer in the Niheo language, she just burst into tears, and she was just like telling her everything, and like how important that is, like in healthcare, but also like us as Niheo people in these roles where we're stepping up and we're having to be that, like, that safe face.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that, Natasha. And so we call them patient journeys in healthcare speak, which is a patient, a client starting off from the parking lot or the ambulance and then moving through the hospital, the system, interacting with everybody. What are their experiences like? And until we can do that for um, our people in the many different ways in which they need support from health systems, then we're not there, right? We still have a ways to go, and I don't think it's that hard, Natasha. Like, I shouldn't say that. In one sense, it's it's difficult, but once I've seen health systems, health leaders really want to get there, you can really make some big differences quickly, much like your story, right? If you have this role, you support this role, you have policies and procedures to support the role and support the roles as it supports clients, you can deliver amazing healthcare, right? Like none of that story was technically hard. It just really needed some intentional support to make sure that that would be in place every time for every Indigenous client that came through.
Yeah, and the one thing that I do in my work is, like, I teach about how we as human beings, we take things in through our senses, right? That is what is guiding us towards our reactions, our responses to the world around us. And so visually, as you're saying, like the colors of the hospital and all of these things that we're taking in as not just as Indigenous people, but as human beings in general, and knowing how much that it affects our responses and our actions and everything going forward, like, it makes a big difference.
Oh, and it makes a big difference to the clinicians, certainly to Indigenous clients, but also all clients, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like if you can develop that kind of capability in your hospital, there you can really build something like that for anybody. To be able to experience. So often I will be brought in, like help us help us on our with supporting Indigenous clients, which is great. It's a great starting point and a great goal. But often you will find that the clinicians they have these epiphanies, these aha moments. They start delivering better care. They start really enjoying the care that they're delivering. The hospital administration really starts to be prouder of the services and the programs that are happening there at their particular facilities. So it is an incredible journey to be able to see, and I'm optimistic. I don't think there's no reason we can't have more of that, Natasha, for everybody.
It's like universal perspective shift, um, which is it's beautiful. So how does cardiac health, well, actually, first of all, can you tell us about your PhD research
Mm.
in cardiac wellness in Indigenous guided primary care? And why do you feel this work matters?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Natasha. Yeah, so the PhD work that I'm currently doing here at UBC Okanagan campus, Healing Hearts, uh, cardiac health support in primary care setting with Indigenous peoples. So we think it's important because there's not a lot known in the context of literature. So much of healthcare and kind of policies and procedures are drawn from the literature, literature and research and such that we didn't find that there was a whole lot of there for people to be able to draw on, nations included. So that's when we decided to get more involved. We did have some notion that we thought that cardiac health might be one of the most impactful chronic conditions, and when I say impactful, the most prevalent. So we weren't even sure about that, but we did know we wanted to try and have the most impact that we could for Indigenous peoples, Indigenous health programs. Uh, and primary care is such a cost effective, perhaps maybe I could make the argument the most culturally safe environment in which to support Indigenous peoples on a cardiac health on a cardiac in a cardiac health journey. It tends, like I said, it tends to be quite cost effective as well, and a place where you see quite a bit of nations getting started on their own Indigenous-led healthcare programs. That we thought that there was a lot of good fit there for some of these different groups.
Yeah, that's powerful. So when you're talking about um, these indigenous communities wanting to strengthen their healthcare systems and creating their own healthcare systems, where do you see that going? Like, where do you see from where we're at right now to looking forward?
That's a good question, Tasha. What I hope is we will be seeing a lot more traditional medicine, traditional healing ceremony practices as part of a healthcare journey.
Mhm.
I really kind of I
I
have
love
these
that.
two. What's that? What's that, Natasha?
I said I love that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Good. And there's so many studies, again, research studies that prove this, right? Dr. Brown did a study about the impact of elders on moderate to mildly depressed clients, to which elders got better outcomes than clinicians. There was an ethnobotany study of Cree elders who identified traditional medicines that were very effective in increasing insulin, improving diabetes for patients, right? So it's all around us, and we know it. It's in the evidence. It's now a matter of moving it into kind of our Western sense of what healthcare is and could be. I get to do work with nations too that are on healthcare journeys, and the message that I hear from nations too is medicine. It's not that it's bad or surgeries are not bad. All of these things are really important, and we deserve access to these very important things as well. We just are not sure they should be emphasized as much, or the frontline thing, or right, just where it would kind of sit in the landscape, if you will. The healthcare landscape would shift a little bit.
It's similar to what you were saying about Canada in the US, right? Like, it's not everything's black and white. Like, there actually is nothing that is black and white. And again, part of what I teach in my work is like allowing two stories to exist at one time, right? Like, and so that sounds a lot like your vision, right? Like, how can both of these things, need none, bad or good, how can they exist and amplify and evolve, for the betterment of not just Indigenous people, but for everybody?
It precisely. Yeah, that's exactly right, Natasha. And I really think there's going to be some exciting things happening in the next 10 years or so along these lines as well. So I'm looking forward to it.
So, what role do you see education and education and training playing in shifting healthcare culture toward equity and respect for Indigenous knowledge?
Yeah, that's a great. You have a lot of great questions here for me today. So I think it's a pretty profound role that education can have. Uh, the whole reason I got to this PhD journey was an elder who said, I was very much so on a healthcare kind of leadership journey, and she brought me to the side and said, "Look, we are underrepresented in research, in education, at these tables. and you owe it to your ancestors and the people coming after you to do this, to do this kind of work. So I always like to tease, you can't unhear something like that, right? Like a purpose statement like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, this the PhD work was never on the roadmap per se until an elder really pointed it out very clearly for me. And she's right, right? Like I said, the more and more time that I've spent in research settings, which then go on to influence education settings, is you can really start to shape this future that we were talking about of this integration. I call it like a complementary integration of Indigenous and Western ways into a really robust, dynamic healthcare system. Uh, for everybody, or for particular nations that are interested in this journey. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to teach some courses, and so you see it in people's mind. You think healthcare is this one thing,
Yeah.
and for people like myself that have been in healthcare for a long time, it doesn't have to be. It's only that way because that's what we've been telling ourselves for so long. And it's really through education. Education's a really nice way in which we can start to look at um, um, our habits, or why we're doing the things that we're doing, and start to unravel it.
Yeah. Like we will never go backwards, right? As a people, like to prior colonization, and I feel the same way about business, right? Like how can we take all the good parts and of both, indigenous culture, knowledge, and business, and evolve with that, the good parts of each, right? So tell me, what are the main workshops that you facilitate? What do you normally speak about
Mm.
during speaking engagements?
Yeah, so I'm lucky enough to have a range of topics that I help support. So I do quite a bit with Indigenous business for some of the universities, for the reasons that you're talking about. That the leadership, the negotiations, business cycles. There can be a lot of differences or things to think about for First Nation students. Uh, then I am lucky enough to do quite a bit with cultural safety work, and of course with healthcare leadership as well. Um, let's see here. We did some Indigenous economic development work as well, so that's been really nice to do. And then part of that too also includes quite a bit around equity, diversity, inclusion, and social justice as well, to help kind of facilitate this change.
Is that more like truth and reconciliation, or
I,
is it truly diverse DEI?
yeah, yeah. So it will. There's overlap, and it kind of depends on the client and the students and the course that I'm brought in for. But there will most times there's some overlap. But I do try and make sure to let people know one doesn't necessarily include the other, right? Reconciliation work is specific, and needs some really specific thought processes, uh, and very intentional efforts. Uh, the DEI work can be a little bit more around just general diversity, and a place to start. That is one of my kind of insights in courses, is DEI might be a way to get started on a reconciliation journey. But please remember, again, I might not know the student's particular journey or the organization that I'm brought into per se, but please don't equate one for the other. There's some very specific differences and nuances uh, f- with the two topics,
Yeah, absolutely.
in my
So
understanding of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's my same understanding as well. Um, so going forward, if anybody's wanting to follow you, where can they go?
Yeah, thanks, Natasha. I do not have a great online presence. LinkedIn is probably
LinkedIn.
where one can find me the most. Your organization, of course, and hopefully I'll be coming out with quite a bit more publications and activities here in the next year or so as we kind of move to completion with the research project. But those would be the best options.
Okay, amazing. And so we'll have all of his information in the show notes. If you want to click and subscribe to hear more about our other additional speakers, again, please subscribe. And thank you so much, Casey, for joining us.
Thank you,
It was
Natasha.
a delight to interview you and have a conversation with you about all of the amazing changes and aspirations that you are working on within the healthcare industry. Um, so yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Natasha.